If you clicked on this video, you already know something is wrong with this story. You've known for a while. I pulled up Jeffrey Epstein's natal chart, January 20th, 1953, Brooklyn, New York. And I overlaid the transits that are hitting his chart right now in 2025 and 2026. What I found made me sit back in my chair. Because the planets are doing something to this man's chart that they have not done in his entire lifetime. And what it reveals about who gets exposed next is written in exact degrees and exact dates. But before I show you what I found, I want to say something to you directly, because I know who watches a video like this at this hour. You're someone who's been paying attention, you followed the names, you followed the flight logs, you followed the connections, and then you watched the whole thing just go quiet. And at some point you stopped bringing it up. Not because you stopped caring, but because you got tired of the look people give you when you do. I see you. And there is a reason you're here tonight. Because the same planetary transit that is about to crack this story wide open is the one that brought you to this screen. Pluto is in Aquarius now, and Pluto doesn't forget. What I'm about to walk you through is going to change how you see this entire case. Not through speculation, not through conspiracy, through the chart. Through degrees, through transits, through dates, you can circle on your calendar and watch for yourself. This is the astrology they never wanted you to learn how to read. Let me show you what I found. But first I want to stay with you for a moment. Because something brought you here tonight, and it wasn't just curiosity. It's late. Your screen is the only light in the room, and you're doing what you do. Following the thread, one more click, one more document, one more video, because something in you won't let this rest even when every reasonable part of you says you should be sleeping. You remember where you were when this story broke. You remember the arrest. You remember that brief window when it seemed like the whole thing might actually blow open, when names were surfacing and documents were being filed, and for a moment it felt like the system was going to work the way it's supposed to work. And then you watched it close. Not all at once, not dramatically. It closed the way a door closes in a hospital, quietly, firmly, with the kind of authority that doesn't invite questions. The media coverage shifted. The investigations went sideways. Documents were sealed. Names were redacted. And the public was gently, persistently told that the story had reached its conclusion. That justice, in whatever imperfect form, had been served. That it was time to look elsewhere. And something in your chest tightened, because you knew it wasn't over. You could feel the weight of everything still buried beneath the surface. The names that never made it to a headline. The connections that were quietly severed before anyone could trace them. The machinery of protection that activated the moment the threat became real. You saw it, you felt it, and you couldn't unsee it. You brought it up once, maybe twice, at dinner, with a friend you trusted, and you got the look. Not anger, not outrage, something worse. That careful, measured expression that says you've crossed an invisible line, the one that files you into a category before you've finished your sentence. And after enough of those looks, you went quiet. You kept watching, you kept reading, you kept following every new filing, every unsealed page, every interview with a survivor, in private, at night, on your phone. In the kind of silence that comes after everyone else has stopped caring. Of course you did, because there's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from seeing something clearly that the people around you refuse to look at. It's not that they don't care. It's that looking at this particular thing requires a willingness to accept something deeply uncomfortable about how the world actually works, about who protects whom, about what money can buy when there's enough of it, about the distance between the justice system as it's described and the justice system as it operates. Most people would rather not look at that distance, but you held it. You're still holding it. And the person who keeps looking, who keeps noticing, who keeps saying, wait, this doesn't add up, that person ends up carrying the weight of their own perception alone. Late at night, in browser tabs nobody else sees, in a quiet, private vigil that no one asked you to keep, but that you couldn't put down if you tried. I want you to know something. Nothing is wrong with you for paying attention. What you've been doing, that quiet, stubborn, sometimes obsessive refusal to accept the official version of this story, that's not a flaw in your thinking. That is your thinking working exactly as it should. That is pattern recognition doing its job. And here's the thing. That feeling you've carried, that sense that something is building underneath the surface, that the silence can't hold forever, that eventually the sheer mass of what's been buried becomes heavier than all the mechanisms holding it down. That feeling has a name in astrology. It's called Pluto. And Pluto just entered Aquarius for the first time in over 200 years, and it is sitting directly on Jeffrey Epstein's Sunday. Let me show you the chart. Epstein was born with his sun at 0 degrees Aquarius, right on the cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius. In astrology, that cusp is one of the most charged boundaries in the entire zodiac. Capricorn is the sign of institutional power, hierarchies, legacy, wealth, old money, control, exerted from the top of the pyramid downward. And Aquarius is the sign of collective awakening, radical transparency, systems that serve humanity rather than exploit it. His sun sits on the exact degree where those two worlds meet, the gatekeeper between the old order and the new. And opposite that sun, 180 degrees across the chart, sits his natal Pluto in Leo. Sun opposite Pluto. This is one of the most intense aspects a person can be born with. It speaks to a life defined by hidden power, obsessive control, secrets held as leverage, an identity so deeply entangled with shadow that it cannot survive in daylight. The sun is who you are. Pluto opposite the sun is the thing that controls who you are from a place no one can see. This is not interpretation. This is the chart speaking, and I can prove it. Because this isn't the first time a major transit hit Epstein's chart and something broke open in the real world. In July of 2019, when he was arrested, transiting Saturn and the lunar south node were conjunct his natal Sunday Saturn, the planet of consequences. The south node, the point of karmic reckoning, both sitting on his sun at the same time. The astrology of that arrest was exact. And in late 2023, when the first major wave of sealed documents was ordered released, transiting Pluto was at 29 degrees Capricorn, the final degree of Capricorn. 1 degree from his Sunday knocking on the door. The chart matched. It matched then. It matches now. And what it's showing for the next 2 years makes everything that came before look like a prelude. Pluto, the slowest moving planet in astrology, the one associated with death, rebirth, excavation, and the absolute destruction of anything false, has now entered Aquarius. And it is crossing his natal sun degree. Pluto conjunct the natal Sunday. This is the single most thoroughgoing transit in all of astrology. It takes everything that identity was built upon, every facade, every alliance, every secret structure, and it dismantles it all the way down to the bedrock, down to the part that was supposed to never be seen. And it doesn't matter that Epstein is dead. A natal chart is not a biography. It's an energy signature, a pattern imprinted in the cosmic field at the moment of birth. When Pluto crosses that pattern, everything still connected to it gets activated. Every relationship, every financial thread, every favor owed and name recorded, and arrangement made in the dark. The web doesn't disappear when the spider dies. And Pluto just found the web. Think of it like this. Imagine a lake in deep winter. The surface is frozen solid, thick, opaque, impenetrable. And beneath that ice, everything that fell in, everything that was thrown in, everything that was deliberately placed there because someone believed the cold would keep it hidden forever, it's all still there. Preserved perfectly, intact, waiting. The people who put those things beneath the surface are counting on one thing: that the freeze holds, that the winter is permanent, that ice, once thick enough, becomes indistinguishable from stone. But here's what they forgot: seasons are not optional. They are not subject to negotiation or influence or wealth. And Pluto just changed the season. For years, the surface held. It looked permanent. It felt permanent. Most people walked across it without ever thinking to look down. But you kept looking down. You kept pressing your face to the ice and saying, "I can see shapes under there. I can see outlines. I can see the thing everyone is pretending isn't there." And you were told to stop looking. But Pluto doesn't work from the surface. That's what makes it different from every human institution that tried and failed to break this case open. Pluto doesn't need a warrant. It doesn't need a whistleblower. Pluto works from underneath. It heats the ground beneath the lake bed. And when the warmth rises, the ice doesn't crack where anyone expected. It cracks from the center, from the deepest point, from the place they believed was the most protected. And it's not just Pluto. Stay with me, because this is where it shifts. Uranus is about to enter Gemini. Gemini rules information, documents, communications, written records, names on paper. Uranus is the planet of sudden, shocking, irreversible revelation. The flash of lightning that turns darkness into daylight in a single instant. When Uranus enters Gemini, sealed things unseal, classified things surface, redacted names become legible, not gradually. The way lightning works: dark, 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 and then everything is illuminated at once. This transit begins in 2025 and accelerates through 2026. At the same time, Saturn has entered Aries, forming hard square aspects to every significant natal placement sitting in the cardinal signs: Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, Aries. And here's what that means for this story. The generation of powerful people born between the mid-1940s and mid-1960s, the generation that built, populated, and benefited from the world Epstein constructed, they carry heavy cardinal sign placements. Saturn is coming for the structures they relied on. Saturn doesn't rage. Saturn audits. Saturn asks one question: is this built on truth, or is it built on something else? And if the answer is something else, Saturn dismantles it, methodically, completely. That audit has begun. So, understand what you're looking at: Pluto excavating from below, Uranus shattering from above, Saturn methodically removing every structural protection that kept the surface intact. 3 transits, 1 convergence. And convergences like this do not pass quietly. Now, this is the part the title promised you, and I'm going to deliver on it. This is where it becomes very uncomfortable for certain people, because Pluto doesn't just activate one chart. When it crosses a degree, it activates every chart that shares that degree. Every person whose natal planets sit at the same point in the sky as Epstein's sun is now under the same magnifying glass, the same excavation, the same pressure to surface what's been hidden. Their secrets don't just share a time period with his, they share a frequency. And when Pluto cracks his chart open, there's fracture along the same lines. Specifically, anyone with significant natal placements at 0 to 3 degrees of the fixed signs, Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, is under Pluto's direct scrutiny right now. The closer their chart's sensitive points are to Epstein's sun degree, the more entangled their energy signature is with his unraveling. And when Uranus enters Gemini, information surfaces in bursts, documents, depositions, communications that someone believed were destroyed or sealed beyond reach. The people with the most activated early mutable sign placements, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, those are the ones whose paper trails become visible first. When a frozen lake begins to thaw, the thinnest sections go first. The edges go before the center. Once one section gives, the structural integrity of the entire surface is compromised. One crack becomes two. Two becomes 10. And then the weight of everything beneath does the rest. This is how exposure works. Not as a single event, as a cascade. And cascades, once they begin, cannot be managed, cannot be contained, cannot be spun. They have their own momentum, their own timing. And that timing, in this case, is Pluto stationing on Epstein's sun, while Uranus enters the sign of information, and Saturn audits every cardinal degree in the zodiac simultaneously. I have been studying mundane astrology for a long time, and I can tell you that this configuration is as clear a signal as the chart produces. It is not whispering, it is speaking plainly. And what it is saying is that the season of concealment is ending. Pluto moves in 3 stages. The first pass over a degree, the retrograde back over it, and the final direct hit. Each stage goes deeper. The first pass reveals the outline. The retrograde forces a confrontation with what was uncovered. The final pass makes the exposure permanent and irreversible. This 3-stage process for Epstein's natal sun degree runs from 2025 into early 2027. Those are your windows. Those are the dates. And if you learn to read an ephemeris, you can track every single activation in real time. And now I want to talk about you. Because everything I just showed you about Pluto activating charts connected to Epstein's, that same mechanism is working on the chart of every person who has been paying attention to this story, including yours. If you have any planet, any angle, any significant point in Aquarius or in Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, this transit is moving through your life too. The same energy that is dragging hidden things to the surface out there in the world is doing something inside you. You've felt it. You don't have language for it yet, but you've felt it. A restlessness that won't let you settle. A refusal to tolerate things you used to accept without question. A hunger for what's real, what's honest, what's true that is so deep and so relentless that it keeps you awake past midnight watching a video about astrology and justice and the things people do when they think no one is watching. That hunger is not a problem. That is not anxiety. That's Pluto. And here's what I know about you, even though we've never met. You are someone who sees beneath the surface. You always have been. It's why this case grips you harder than it grips the people around you. It's why you can't file it away. You see the architecture of the thing, the shape, the connective tissue between names and places and timelines that most people never bother to trace. That is a gift. I know it doesn't always feel like one. I know it's lonely. I know it's tiring. I know there are days when it feels like a burden you didn't ask for, this compulsion to understand what's really happening beneath the story everyone agreed to tell. I know you've questioned yourself, wondered if it would be easier to let it go, to stop reading the documents at midnight, to stop following the threads that no one else around you seems to notice or care about. But you can't stop. And the reason you can't is not that something is broken in you, it's that something is awake in you. Something that the current planetary alignment is amplifying in millions of people at once. You are not alone in this. You just got there first. And the reason you're watching this tonight, at this hour, is not random. Pluto in Aquarius is activating the part of you that refuses to look away. The collective is waking up to what you've been seeing for years. The season is changing, and you've been standing at the edge of that frozen lake for longer than most. Watching, waiting, knowing. You feel it right now. That tightness behind your sternum that shows up whenever you get close to something true. That's not fear, that's recognition. Your body knows what your mind has been trying to prove for years. You weren't wrong, you were early. And this is what I need you to understand about what happens next. The exact degrees where Pluto crosses Epstein's natal sun are active through 2025 and deep into 2026. The most concentrated pressure comes during the months when Pluto stations, when it appears to stop moving in the sky and sits on 1 degree for weeks, drilling straight down. Those station periods are when the biggest revelations surface. Mark them. Uranus enters Gemini, and the information doesn't trickle. This is the moment the ice doesn't just crack, it gives way. And what surfaces comes up fast. Documents that have been sealed will come to light in ways that feel sudden and shocking, but they're not sudden. They've been thawing under pressure for years. The ice was always going to give at this degree, at this time. The timing was always written in the ephemeris for anyone who knew how to read it. And by 2027, when Saturn and Pluto form their next hard aspect, we move past exposure into consequence. Structural, institutional consequence. The kind that doesn't just name names, but dismantles the frameworks that allowed those names to operate with impunity for decades. We are living in the most significant truth and accountability transit window in modern history. Pluto in Aquarius doesn't just expose. Pluto in Aquarius liberates. What follows the thaw is not chaos. It's clarity. A world where these networks cannot operate in shadow because the collective has developed the vision to see in the dark. And that vision, that collective refusal to look away, is not something any institution can reverse. Once a society learns to see a certain kind of pattern, it does not unlearn it. That's the permanence of Pluto. It doesn't just reveal, it transforms the capacity for perception itself. I'm not telling you to hold your breath, I'm telling you to pay attention. Circle the transit windows. Watch the world with an ephemeris open beside you. And notice how the timing matches. Because it will. It always does. Now, one last thing. If you want to understand how Pluto in Aquarius is working in your own chart, personally, look at which house Aquarius rules in your natal chart. That's the area of your life where the excavation is happening. That is where your ice is thawing. And whatever is rising to the surface in that area of your life, let it rise. Don't push it back down. Pluto doesn't reward resistance. Pluto rewards the willingness to see what's true, no matter how uncomfortable the seeing is. And if this is your first time encountering mundane astrology, the branch of astrology that reads world events and power structures through planetary cycles, I want you to know something. This is what astrology was built to do. From the beginning, personal horoscopes came centuries later. The original astrologers were reading empires. They were reading the rise and fall of kings. They were doing exactly what we just did together. And the reason this kind of astrology was pushed out of serious discourse, dismissed, ridiculed, stripped from universities, and reduced to a paragraph in the back of a magazine. Mundane astrology tells you that power operates in cycles, that no dynasty, no institution, no network of protection lasts beyond its planetary expiration date. That the most powerful person on Earth is still subject to the same transits as everyone else. If you were running the world, would you want people to know that? You don't discredit a tool because it doesn't work. You discredit it because it works too well, and it shows things the people in charge would rather you not see. Now, you have that tool. Use it wisely. The title of this video says, "The Astrology They Don't Want You to See." Now you see it. You see that the lake is thawing. You see that the shapes beneath the surface are rising. You see that the season which brings them to light was never in anyone's control. Not the wealthy, not the protected, not the connected, not the people who sealed files and shredded documents and believed that silence, once purchased, lasts forever. Pluto keeps its own records. and Pluto's audit has begun. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being someone who looks beneath the surface, even when it costs you something, even when the people around you would rather you didn't. If this video found you at exactly the right moment, that is not an accident. That is the transit working through you, the same way it's working through the rest of the world, bringing what needs to be seen to the people willing to see it. The season has changed, and you were always going to be awake for it.